Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Tipped. My name is Julian, and this is the buy low and sell high video of week 13 of the fantasy hockey season. Been a couple weeks since I've done one of these, so I hope you guys enjoy the updated content. And I hope you leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and follow me on Twitter. That way I can give you all the updates you need for your fantasy hockey team. So let's jump right into it and start with some players that you should sell high on. And first on the list is Jeremy Swayman of the Boston Bruins. Why am I selling Jeremy Swayman right now? Well, Tuukka Rask just signed with Boston, so Swayman's value is pretty much non-existent now because Ullmark and Rask should be splitting the starts in Boston, and Swayman was just recently sent to the AHL. So unless Rask or Ullmark get injured going forward, Swayman is going to spend the rest of the year in the AHL. So if you can send him to somebody that for some reason still values him, do so right away because he pretty much has no value anymore. Next is Chris Kreider of the New York Rangers, and he's someone who's been insanely hot this whole season. He has 21 goals and 32 points in 37 games. Plays with Mika Zibanejad on both the top power play and the top line. So obviously he's playing with good players, but his shooting percentage right now is 18.8, which is insanely high. His career is actually pretty high at 14.3. And last year, he was actually able to keep up a 19.6 shooting percentage, but let's keep in mind that last year was a shortened season, so he likely would have regressed towards the end of the year. But he is having an amazing season. He's obviously not a must sell, but he's definitely someone you could try to sell high on because his shooting percentage should go down a little bit. And his on-ice shooting percentage right now is also quite high at 12%. And his PDO is at 103.6, which is saying that he is getting a little bit lucky. So he definitely will regress a little bit. So if you can sell him now, that's probably the best time to do so. Next is Brian Rust of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And coming back from injury, the dude scored 11 points, including 7 goals in 3 games. And then he went out with COVID. Okay? That kind of production is absolutely insane. And if somebody is expecting that kind of production for the rest of the season, please trade Brian Rust now because you'll get an absolute ransom for Brian Rust. That being said, Brian Rust could definitely go for almost a point per game season this year, but he's not going to go for that pace that you just saw from him, right? That's absolutely crazy. His shooting percentage right now is 18.4%. His career is 13.1. So he has a little bit of room to regress a little bit there, and his on-ice shooting percentage is quite high. So he is getting quite lucky right now. Obviously, he has 20 points in 15 games. So don't expect that kind of pace for the rest of the year, but he's definitely someone who could potentially maintain a point per game pace. That I wouldn't put against him. Next is Evan Rodrigues of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And again, he's not a must sell. I'm going to tell you why. Now that Malkin is back, he probably won't be power play 1 anymore once Rust returns from the COVID list. He has 6 power play goals and 1 power play assist in the season. So obviously his value will take a hit not being on that top power play. But where does he line up with Rust back in the lineup? Because right now he's on that top line with Crosby and Gensel. But when Rust gets back, it's likely Rust that takes that spot on the top line. So does Rodrigues line up on the second line with Carter, Malkin? Maybe, and maybe bumps Kapanen down. But if he doesn't bump Kapanen down and they decide to put Rodrigues on the third line, suddenly I don't like his value that much anymore. Not top power play, third line. Don't love that. I don't think they will do that, but just keep that in mind. If they do that, guys, you're going to want to sell Rodrigues because in all likelihood, he doesn't have that much fantasy value being down there in the bottom 6. If Russ comes back and Rodrigues is still on Crosby's line or is moved to Malkin's line, I don't mind that at all. I don't think he's going to be too hurt from that. Obviously, the power play points won't be there anymore, but I still think he's going to have a relatively solid season. But if you were to sell Evan Rodrigues, this is probably the time to do so before he does get demoted off that top power play and lowers his value a tiny bit. Next is Tanner Jeannot of the Nashville Predators, and he's having an awesome season as well. Has 22 points, 11 goals in 36 games. Only has 55 shots on goal, so his shooting percentage right now is 20%, which is very, very high. And with Philip Forsberg out, the dude's actually getting a shot on the top line in Nashville, so that's obviously a really great plus for him. He also hits 3.2 times per game, so if you're in a bangers league, you absolutely love that. Dude's got a super safe floor, and he has been able to put up points almost every single night. The thing is, his shooting percentage is 20%, which is not super sustainable. I understand the last year's shooting percentage was almost the same, but he didn't really play a full season last year, and his on-ice shooting percentage is high as well. So he is getting quite lucky. So those numbers will definitely regress, especially when he's put back onto the third line when Forsberg returns. That being said, I don't hate Jeannot for the rest of the season. I think he has a safe floor in hitting leagues. In leagues where hits are not counted, I don't love him so much. I do think he will regress quite a decent amount. I think he's holdable in most leagues, but I don't think he has the safest floor in non-hitting leagues, unfortunately. Because he's doing so well, now is the perfect time to sell Tanner Jeannot before he crashes back down to earth. Moving on to players that you can buy low on, and first on the list is Ryan O'Reilly. He has 22 points in 32 games this season, and right now he's playing with arguably the two hottest players on the Blues, Barbashev and Buchnevich, which is a really awesome line if you ask me. His shooting percentage this whole season is quite low at only 7.6%. He's got a pretty average career shooting percentage of 10.2, so that's going to go up. Now, Ryan O'Reilly gets top power play time, is now on a really awesome line, and lately has been doing a lot better, so you should buy low on him now before he really starts to rebound and starts to look like Ryan O'Reilly of old. Next on the list is Tom Wilson, and he had himself a really amazing start to the season and has 24 points in 33 games as a total on the season, which isn't bad, but he has 0 points in his last 7 games and only 1 point in his last 10. He is ice cold. Don't get me wrong, he way overperformed to start the year due to the Ovechkin exposure, right? His shooting percentage is still 16.1, whereas his career is 11.3, and his on-ice shooting percentage is 14%. So yeah, he's getting lucky this season, except for lately, right? Right now, he's on a line with Backstrom, but I do believe that he can find his way back onto a line with Ovechkin sooner or later because they're going to want to get him going. If he doesn't find his way back onto a line with Ovechkin, though, he'll likely be pretty disappointing for the rest of the year. What seems like a seemingly big issue now is that the team is healthy, and therefore Tom Wilson is no longer on the top power play. But the thing is, Tom Wilson only had 3 power play points all year anyway, so it doesn't really concern me that he's not playing PP1 anyway. I'm looking to add him only in bangers points leagues because of the hitting upside. So he does have a safe floor because he hits about 3 times a game. I'd also take a look at him in bangers categories leagues that have hits and penalty minutes because he's as pretty guaranteed as it gets when it comes to penalty minutes. And if they put him back on a line with Ovechkin, then the production will definitely start coming again. Next is Zach Hyman of the Edmonton Oilers, and I would buy him now before it's too late. He plays with McDavid on both the power play and 5-on-5, and Evander Kane potentially signing with the Oilers could potentially increase his value. They might end up putting Hyman on the right wing and playing Evander Kane with McDavid and Hyman. Who knows, right? The only thing is if they do sign Evander Kane, Hyman may end up being kicked off the power play, at least when Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is healthy. But it could end up helping his overall numbers anyway because we all know Evander Kane can pot home some goals, so that could end up helping him in the long run. I think Hyman so far has had a decent season, but he could definitely do better, especially with the exposure he's given to Connor McDavid. And I think now is the perfect time to buy him since at the moment, him and all the Edmonton Oilers are ice cold. Next is Noah Dobson of the New York Islanders, and buy low here more so means before people start catching on to how good this guy has been lately, try to get him or pick him up if he's available in your free agency. He has 10 points in his last 10 games, and he mans the Islanders' top power play, which has finally been clicking, and he's been pretty much the only guy on the Isles really getting points other than Barzal. He's looking really, really good. So he's someone that you definitely want to be adding to your team if he's available, or trading for hopefully not that much if someone already has him. I'm not going to sit here and guarantee you that he's going to have an amazing season, like start being a point per game like he has been, but he's definitely someone who's worth adding to your team. And seeing if you can get him at a discount right now, maybe he will continue that pace. It's a definite possibility. Next is Nikolai Ehlers of the Winnipeg Jets, has 25 points in 33 games, was just taken off the COVID list, and he's an absolute stud. In his last 3 games, though, he only has 1 point. So for any Ehlers owners with short-term recency bias, you might be able to sneak yourself a nice deal for him, because before that, he was absolutely on fire. He still plays on this top line with Mark Scheifele, so he's definitely someone that you want to buy and just reap all the benefits. Next is Thomas Chabot of the Ottawa Senators, and he was absolutely insane of the month of December, scoring 9 points in a 6-game span at 1 point in the month. His 2 most recent games, though, he went -3 in both of those games and had no points. And the Senators haven't played in a long time, so people could potentially be really sick of the postponed games and see that his most recent 2 games weren't even that great anyway and try to deal Thomas Chabot. If that's the case, I'm absolutely buying him, because not only does the postponed games mean that's a good thing because Ottawa's going to have more games down the stretch, it also means that they're valuing him very low. And Thomas Chabot is a fantastic hockey player, and he's a really good defenseman to have on your team. The dude can definitely put up points. Buy low on him. Next is Josh Norris, and in his last couple games, he had no points, but before that, he was on an absolute tear. Hopefully, people don't remember that he was on an absolute tear before that, but Josh Norris has had an awesome season. His shooting percentage is definitely a little bit high, but Ottawa has played a lot less games than pretty much every team. They've only played 29 games. Some teams have played 39 games. So definitely a team that I want to be buying players from, much like with Chabot, right? Like Chabot, that's another reason to buy him, because Ottawa hasn't played a lot of games, which means you're going to get more down the stretch, and that should really help your team. Josh Norris is someone that I'm looking to buy because he's still relatively low rostered, and he plays with Tkachuk and Batherson on both the top line and top power plays. So people might not value him as high as those other guys, and therefore might be a guy that you can kind of sneak a really nice deal in for. Next is Jacob Markstrom, who over the course of the season has had a really good year, right? His numbers are pretty good, has 5 shutouts, but he's had a pretty rough stretch lately. In 3 of his past 4 games, he has a save percentage of below 900, and he allowed 4 or more goals in those 3 out of 4 games, which is not great. So right now he's having a rough stretch, and obviously he has dealing with a little bit of an injury, so that may have factored into it. But when he gets back from that small, tiny, lingering injury, he should be good. And Calgary has been pretty solid all year. Obviously, they've been a little bit less solid lately, but I think that they're going to bounce back, and Markstrom should have himself a pretty strong finish. So if you are going to buy Markstrom, now is the time to do so, now that he's a little bit cold. Next is Tyson Barrie of the Edmonton Oilers, and nobody should be more welcoming of Evander Kane than Tyson Barrie. Why? Well, Evander Kane likely is put on that top power play in Edmonton, and Kane is a pretty good power play guy. That means more power play goals, and that means more likely that Barrie gets some power play assists. That should really help with his production. Also, Barrie has really underperformed this year, and playing on a top power play with McDavid and Draisaitl, you're going to perform at some point. As soon as that power play starts clicking again, it's going to be just fine. Next is Elias Pettersson of the Vancouver Canucks, and he's been pretty disappointing this season. I don't think anybody can argue that. With only 17 points in 34 games, he's only getting a point every 2 games so far. That being said, his shooting percentage is 8%, whereas his career shooting percentage average is double that at 16%. So he's going to regress positively, which sooner or later, right? Right now he's getting on a line with Pearson and Höglander, which I don't absolutely love for line mates, but I don't hate it either. And he does get to play on the top power play in Vancouver. Vancouver has been a lot better lately, and Pettersson has looked a little bit better lately as well, with 4 points in his last 7 games. I think that'll continue an even better trend. His on-ice shooting percentage is 8.6, which is quite low. He's getting a little bit unlucky. So Pettersson, while he probably won't have the superstar season that a lot of people were expecting at the beginning of the year, he still should turn it around a significant amount and should have at least a half decent season. You can buy really, really low on Pettersson right now. I had a league where he was traded 1-for-1 for Eric Chernak. So he's really at an all-time low right now. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. Please leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. I hope you guys enjoyed the content today, and I'll catch you in the next episode of Fantasy Tipped.